Hey, everybody. Today I have Rob Dube. Rob's a speaker, an author, a mindfulness expert, and co-founder of one of Forbes' top 25 small companies. His passion is helping entrepreneurs live mindful, impactful, and fulfilling lives. So, Rob, thanks for your time today and welcome to the show.
Mark, you're the best for having me. I'm so excited to chat with you today. It's been way too long.
It has been way too long. We were kind of catching up a little bit here beforehand, and it's been maybe, I don't know, 8-9 years since we actually had more than a handful of words. But I feel like I've been with you for the journey the whole time, which is my pleasure and my fortunate gratitude to be connected to you and your ecosystem of stuff.
You're too kind.
So hopping in, I want to dive right into it. And so if you would, on a high level, Rob, talk to me about what you mean by the intersection of soul and leadership as that pertains to entrepreneurship.
The intersection of soul and leadership. So you're jumping right in, Mark, aren't you?
Let's get in the deep end.
Well, I think as entrepreneurs, we enter into this very unique space. There aren't many of us when you think about it. And we have a very unique opportunity. It's actually an honor to do what we do because we're people who change the world in many different ways. I don't have to say what all the ways are, but it could be our products, it could be our services, it could be how we impact our people, no matter what the size of our business. And so the question is, how well are we in tune with ourselves so we can show up best in the world? And, being entrepreneurs, we have that unique opportunity to make a big difference. Doesn't matter what your products and services are. I mean, my first business, which I still own, is a managed print services business. We sell copiers and laser printers and multifunction printers. I don't think we're changing the world in through our products, but it's through our interactions with the people that are on our team and the people that we work with that make a big difference. But it as the entrepreneur, as the leader within an organization, we have to be very in tune inside so we can be more aware of how we show up. So that's where you might say soul and leadership intersects.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. As our listeners know, I'm a huge fan of the entrepreneur because I believe that they impact, just as you described, so many things. Whether it's the community they play in, whether it's the people in the organization, it's like this big ripple that they send out into the world. And so bringing that back into the soul of the leader, the soul of the entrepreneur, what does it mean to be in tune? What does that really mean?
You must know thyself. And understand that you are on a life's journey and you may never truly figure it out. And that's perfectly okay.
So know thyself, like so many things we talk about, it sounds very simple, but I'm sure it's not easy. In fact, I know it's not easy. Right. So how do we approach that? How do we begin the journey to know ourselves?
Yeah, well, everybody has to figure out where the right starting place is for themselves. So, for some, it might be as simple of things that, I would imagine your audience has some familiarity with already, but maybe not. So I don't want to assume, but you might even do a Colby or something along those lines that
Right.
help give you a little bit more insight into who you are and your mode of operation. That's kind of like the dipping the toe piece to it. So you could start there. You might go out to the people closest to you in your life and you might ask them, what are my strengths and my weaknesses in this life? And it can be quite insightful. If you want to keep going, you might start going into areas of personal talk therapy or something along those lines. So these are ways to kind of begin a journey and keep going down a journey, and some of the more common ways that I'm sharing with you at this moment.
Sure. So Colby, in case somebody doesn't know, that's basically a tool to help you understand yourself by taking a series of questions, and then they sort of give you a pattern, and it can explain to you what that means and how you relate to yourself and the world. I get asking other people how they see us. Talk therapy. What does talk therapy mean?
Yeah, so it's a very unique thing that's more common these days than it ever was before, and this is a unique relationship that you have with a licensed therapist or psychotherapist, who you can go share kind of what's going on in that mind of yours, because I would
Right.
imagine, especially if you're an entrepreneur, there's a lot going on up there.
Right.
And so you can keep that at a very surface level, like what's going on today and why am I showing up the way I am, and how can I find a little bit of peace in my day-to-day life. Or you can go and start to investigate maybe some of the things that some of your life experiences that have shaped the way you are today, that may help you come to terms with, and maybe put closure on some of the things that were painful in your life, if you had any of those things.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. You and I are both blessed. I feel to be friends with a little guy named Gino Wickman, and I know you and he have your journey that's going on together. He and I have a journey that's
Yes.
going on, and so he'll send me books every once in a while, and he's like, "Hey, Mark, you ought to read this and see what you think." And so there's some things that I've read that sort of talk to me about my past, and looking at things that I maybe don't understand or don't realize how I'm interpreting them or using them. My interpretation, it's kind of scary stuff. It's kind of it's uncomfortable stuff,
Good way
and
of putting it.
just open and honest on a surface level. I've been very fortunate. I've had a very blessed life in many ways. Great parents, great family. Grew up in a world that didn't have a tremendous amount of what I would consider hardship, and so there's probably a little voice in my head that says, "Ooh, do I really want to dig around back there?" And candidly, I might be a little bit afraid of what I might find. So maybe I'm the only one that's like that. Maybe there's other people out there that are like that. But if you have sort of a fear of opening that box, how should I think about that?
Well, it's in there and it's affecting you and those around you in 1,000 ways every day that you don't even realize. And so, there's such freedom when you let it out. There's nothing to be afraid of, especially if you're being guided by a professional. And so, for those listening that may have some things that maybe are at the forefront, and they're very aware of what they are. I highly recommend go to a professional and work through it in that way. For others, they're on a self-study journey. They
Right.
work through things through books that they read, or nowadays you can watch videos on YouTube. You can do workshops online, etc. There's all kinds of things that you can do to better tap into your inside. And I always say it's the most rewarding journey that you'll ever take, because once you let those things surface and let them free, you are now free, and you will have a life with more ease.
Yeah. So let's kind of, I want to get the words right, but in your most recent book, The 10 Disciplines for Maximizing Your Energy, you talk about entrepreneurs who have made it to the top of the mountain, but that they still feel there's something more, there's something missing. And so maybe, talking about that journey, talking about the top of that mountain, what can you share about
Yeah,
your personal story, your personal journey in that direction?
sure. So, for me, and we always like to encourage people, and this is an exercise that people can, take away from our chat today, is, maybe take 10, 15 minutes at some point in the next day or so and write your inner story. So I'll share a quick outer story, and then I'll share an inner story.
Okay.
So my outer story is, I was an entrepreneur since I was 14. I started selling blow pop lollipops out of my locker with my best friend. The two of us had businesses all through high school and college. We're unemployable. By the way, everyone listening, you've had some story like that, and you're just like me. I get it. All right. So we're the same. Okay. And the two of us started this business after college, and all I could think about is, boy, if one day I had a business that did $1 million in sales, I will have made it. Well, sure enough, we had $1 million in sales, but it wasn't enough. Now I wanted to have 5 million, and then it was 5 million, and that wasn't enough. And you know how it goes, everybody. That's how it goes. It seems to never end. In 2004, we sold the business. We had a nice exit. 18 months later, dumb luck, they gave it back to us. So then we had the company back. And we put a lot of focus on our culture. And as you mentioned, we've been recognized for that, as you mentioned at the introduction. Right. I appreciate that. So that's, and now I'm in the owner's box, and I'm not running the company, and my business partner's not running the company anymore. We have somebody who's running it. And so, that's an outer story. It from the outside, it's been successful. It wasn't always easy and still isn't, but it's been successful. The inner story for me was at the age of 8, my parents were divorced. It began a whole series of events that included mental, physical, and sexual abuse in different areas of my life. And that showed up in different ways. Like when I was in high school, I could not wait I always used to say, I can't wait to be an adult. Mm-hmm. It's just like, it couldn't come soon enough for me. And then running a business with my best friend, and how all this stuff would show up in our partnership. And then as we had employees, how it showed up as I led people, how it showed up in my marriage. I got married early. We had children early. And how is that showing up in our relationship? And, just really having to put a focus on those things that I had happen to me in my life, addressing them so I could come to terms with them and set them free and show up better in my marriage and in my business partnerships, and as a leader, and because I knew I was having an impact on many people as a result of the position that I put myself in as an entrepreneur.
So did you realize that stuff was there, or did you repress some of it and then it came out later?
All of that.
In terms of your awareness of it?
I think, in my 20s, I recognized intuitively that something did not feel right, and I did not like the feeling of it. And so I had an intuition about that, and an intuition around what can I do to get help for this. Back then, therapy was not as common, I guess, as you might say it is today. But I was searching. And so I was asking a lot of people, do you have any ideas or thoughts for ways I can, try to find some calmness in my mind? And
so how did you ask that question? Who did you feel comfortable enough to ask, and how did you ask?
I had people in my life, a few people in my life, one of them being Joel, my business partner at the time, and still is, at Image One. And actually his parents were really impactful for me growing up. So those were two places that I was able to be vulnerable. So they were helpful in just giving me ideas of ways that I might be able to address some of the ways I was feeling.
And so there wasn't, if I'm understanding you correctly, there wasn't like a trigger event or something that sort of brought this to your attention. It was just it was a general feeling. You just had an intuition that something wasn't right. Yeah. And then intuitively you just began to talk to people you really trusted, and then act on what they told you.
Exactly. I just felt like I had an edge all the time.
So what was the first thing that really moved you forward?
Well, I think talk therapy was really useful for me. Okay. Yeah. So that was for sure the first thing. And then I went from there, and I continued to search, still looking for, a sense of peace and ease in my life. For me, one of the things that really connected with me was meditation. So I began meditating, and I noticed that it was having a positive effect on the way my body felt and the way my mind was, acting. Lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah, so let's dive into meditation a little bit, because I know you've done that for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think about meditation. It just, either, or maybe it doesn't get on their radar, maybe it does get on their radar, but they never really make it a daily habit. They really never, incorporate it into their program in any way that sort of sticks. What gets in the way? How could somebody maybe solve that riddle so that they could experience the benefits that you feel come from meditation?
Well, the first thing I always like to share with people, because I'm a teacher now, and the first thing I always like to share.
I love that, by the way. That's perfect.
But it might not be your thing. So, I know a lot of times people say to me, I really need to meditate. I know I should be doing it. And I always say, maybe you shouldn't be, honestly. Like, take the pressure off. Maybe you shouldn't be. I do. And I think I encourage people to, what we like to say in our 10 disciplines is to be still. And so what I like to ask people is, why is it hard for you to be still, whether that be in meditation or journaling or contemplation or prayer or anything else that one might be able to think about? Why is it hard for you to slow down for 20 or 30 minutes every day? I'm busy. I have a busy life. Once I sit down, all I start thinking about are all the things I need to do. And that makes sense. And what I like to share around that is that's a message. That's a message for you. And so you see this, the moment you sit down, what happens is the floodgates open, and all the things that you say, are repressed. And some of them are, if you were to sort of think of your torso as, at the top, those are the things that aren't as suppressed, and at the bottom, things are more suppressed, just to use that as a visual. And what's the first things that come out of the floodgate are just, the conversation you had with your team member and how that was irritating, and you're going to just ruminate on that for 5 minutes, and that's going to be really annoying, and you don't really want to think about it. So it's easier to be busy than to actually sit there and be with it. And when that whole process sort of relieves itself, the next level starts coming up. And those are also things that you oftentimes don't really want to address. So I think oftentimes, intuitively, we don't want to be still because we know it may be painful for us to do that. And there's a great quote I always like to share from Anne Lamott. She says, "My mind is like a bad neighborhood. I try to never go there alone." And I always like to ask people, is that maybe why it's difficult for you to be still? As it relates to meditation, in my own experience and others that are regular practitioners, is that it allows for us to first, these areas of suppression or just whatever's going on in our minds, we allow those thoughts and ideas and all those kinds of things to just be. And you might just let them go, float like clouds in the sky or waves, washing in and washing back out. So we don't attach to them. And we practice that. We practice not having judgment on it. We practice not solving any of these things that are coming up for us. There's nothing to solve in this moment. We're just noticing them. And there's a real benefit to just noticing and allowing them to be as they are. And then through the practice of coming to your breath, which is essentially an anchor. Some people use a mantra. I happen to use a breath, and it's an anchor to the present moment. Because if you really think about it, that's all you have is this moment. So for example, Mark, you and I are talking right now. And we're connected through this technology, which for me at my age is still mind-blowing, that I can see you and talk to you and see your energy and feel your energy. But it's all we have right now. But we know later we have some other things that we must have going on, and they probably seem somewhat important.
Mm.
But the reality is that this is all we really have at this very moment. And so the more that we can realize that what happened in the past or what we think is going to happen in the future, those things aren't actually happening right now. The past is over, nothing we can do about it. And the future is just what we believe is going to happen. And it's not here yet. So for example, I might have something planned for 2:00 and you and I finish this up. And I think 2:00, I got to be ready, et cetera. And something might happen in my life, and that may not happen at 2:00. They might cancel. Something might happen to me that, means I can't be what I imagined was going to be. And so, just coming to the present moment and being able to be fully present is really what we're practicing when we're meditating.
I love that. So the perspective on the present, and thinking differently about both the past and the future. I'm reminded of, who Derek Sivers is?
Yes.
Okay, so Derek wrote a blog post the other day that I read, basically said the past is a lie. And he told a story about an experience he had when he was younger, where he felt really awful about what had happened and felt his fault and guilt and all the stuff that goes with that. And many, many years passed. And so he goes to basically reconcile with this person who he felt he had wronged. And when he has the encounter, what he learns is her perspective was basically that she was the one at fault. She had the guilt, and she, sort of released him from that. And it was really, really cool
Wow.
story. And so, it's all the spin we put on it. It's all the stuff, the interpretation, the lens that we see it through, the filter that we put it through. Dan Sullivan also will talk about, the past is R&D. It's just practice, and we get to write the story. We get to write our story, with intention around what it is and what it means, and bring that into the present in some useful way, hopefully. Mm-hmm. Question about technology. And so maybe this doesn't apply, but I'm curious. Neurofeedback. So programs where I've played with like a Muse headband, where you try to make the birds show up or go away or whatever, right? By controlling how you think. Does that fit into this? If so, how?
Well, my feeling about tools like that is, and of course, entrepreneurs love them because they want to make the birds come. We're driven. I'm going to get those birds to come.
Right.
So if you're utilizing it for a short-term practice to help yourself understand maybe the feeling or the recognition of what you need to do to get the birds coming, and then maybe after a month, it's time to put it away for good.
Okay.
That's my feeling on it, because the technology, both things like the neurofeedback technology as well as the apps, what ends up happening is we're subconsciously gaming this. So we're entertaining ourselves. At the end of the day is what's ending up happening. So here's an example. I know people, they'll say, yes, I'm using the app, and I've realized that there are certain guides on the app that are, guiding you through the meditation. And I don't like their voices, but I found a couple voices that I do like. And so those are the only ones I'll listen to. And so, we're judging even our meditation practice and what we're hearing and how we're learning. And we only like a certain voice, but we don't like that voice. And, I always like to bring it back to use the technology to learn how to do it. Once you know how to do it, and that you shouldn't need more than 30 days, and that's probably even too much, then it's time to put it away. And I know that's not good for the app and the neurofeedback businesses. And I want to see them be successful, but I do think there's a time to put that away and just practice on your own, because that's the beauty of it, is actually sitting alone with your thoughts and being able to recognize what's going on up there, being able to let them go, bringing yourself back to the present moment. Because then when you go into your everyday life and your interactions, you are more capable of pausing, as they say, in that moment between stimulus and response,
Right.
and showing up in a much better way for yourself first. And then as that translates to those around you. So a stimulus might be somebody just said something that triggers you in your meeting. And now you're ruminating on it as you continue to work through the issue. But
Right.
you're just ruminating on the way you just got treated. But
Right.
through a meditation practice, how you bring that into your life is you allow that to go by like clouds in the sky. You don't allow it to stay with you, because it's just words. They don't mean anything.
So you just turned a phrase there. You allow them to go by like clouds in the sky. Is that an intentional phrase that you've used, or did you just land on that?
Yes. Well, some people that helps them with a visualization.
Right.
Go by like clouds in the sky, or sometimes people like the visualization of the waves in the ocean.
Right.
Yeah.
So I love the connection to the space between stimulus and response. The first person I ever remember calling my attention to that was Stephen Covey, of all people, long time ago, and I was like, that makes a lot of sense. You also referenced the term driven, and I know that's really the entrepreneurs that you're speaking to. So maybe crack that open a little bit. What does that mean?
So a few things. As entrepreneurs, it's most likely you are driven, which means you are in a small minority of the overall population. I think it's somewhere around 10%. So if there's 8 billion people on this planet, there's 800 million that are driven, that are really making big differences in this world. And there's a great book. You don't necessarily have to run out and get it, but it's called Driven, amply titled, by Doug Brackman. And he shares that we all have this D2, D4 gene. And for the driven, the D2, D4 gene essentially shows up in a different way. And it fires in a way for this 10%, in that it's never enough for us. We have this endless energy and this endless pursuit for more. It can mean anything, by the way, not just in entrepreneurship, but we're just constantly going and learning more and doing more and wanting to get to next levels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we burn the people out around us. They can't keep up with us, yet we don't understand why. Like, don't you understand? Why aren't you going at my pace? You're so far behind me. Come on, let's go. Because they just don't fire the way you do. So it's when I share this with entrepreneurs, I see their eyes widen and they start to see and shake their head and say, I get it. This is what's been going on. So we normalize this idea that we're driven. And so what do we do with this driven, piece of who we are? Well, we go out and, in our world, Mark, we build companies, we try to build these empires, I guess, to a certain degree, whatever level of empire it is, and try to maybe make a little difference in the world. And with this driven energy that we have, we're able to, to use that 10X, we're able to go out there and do this 10X thing, which is great. And it's very outside driven, back to that climbing the mountain that you mentioned earlier. We're climbing this mountain, we're trying to 10X, but oftentimes it comes with a lot of angst and a lack of peace. And Gino, who you mentioned earlier, and our partner, we talk about this idea that you can be driven and have peace. It is possible, but it takes going inside to do that.
Very, very cool. So maybe that leads me to this, but the concept of true self, tell us what that means.
that's when you're free. That's when you're free and you are fully you every moment. I always like to share this thought for people to consider, and that is when you were born and you came out of the womb, you were your true self. Nothing got a hold of you. But not too soon after, the world did start to get a hold of you and started to create a certain structure in your life and mental constructs. And so you went from being your true self to being a lot of pieces of a lot of things in our, whether it be those who are having the closest impact to you, to the society that you're a part of. And so then by the time you get older, you've sort of, integrated into all of that. And in many ways, you've lost yourself. And, there are many, many people in this world that have investigated this deeper in all kinds of ways, whether it be religious or spiritual or philosophy, so anybody can kind of find their way and, what resonates with them. But our true self is in here and we can free it by understanding that all we have is this moment. I know I'm coming back to what I said earlier. But by knowing that, we are free of all these other things that are coming at us, all these constant inputs, and all of these things that we think we need to do or show up or, accomplish. What we do when we start to get into that place of being fully in the moment, the present moment, being fully ourselves, is we end up making decisions from love and not fear. So love is from our heart and fear is from our ego. Mm-hmm. And our ego isn't a bad thing. So I just want to say that, but it can show up in a way that isn't always healthy. And so it's good to be aware of that. And so what we end up finding out when we start to investigating this idea of freeing our true selves is we start to understand that our ego's in the way. Oftentimes, many of us have a suit of armor on and nobody can get in it. We're just deflecting all day long. But when we start to take that suit of armor off, little by little, the weight starts to come off. It starts to actually feel really nice. And then when we start to drop the ego, and we start to come from a place of love, and that's just my word. You can find the word that works best for you. But you start to feel free. In other words, the things that happened to you in the past, you don't have to be ashamed of those things anymore. You can just let those be free. They're just circumstances that happen. I can't remember the R&D. That's what you said about Dan Sullivan. And so we can look at these things through a new lens, and just that's fully me. I mean, those were my life circumstances, but I am where I am at this moment with you right now. And I'm showing up with love and gratitude and appreciation for our time together. And so if we can look at every moment in that way, even when things are hard, because that's what life is. I mean, life is full of, they say life it's full of suffering and joy, or you, again, find your words. Those are words that I seem to always come to the forefront of my mind. But we don't want the suffering. We just want the joy. So we're always running after the joy and trying to push away the suffering. But when we understand that that's just life, it's suffering and joy, it's just what's happening in this moment and how we are receiving what is happening to us. So let's use it in a leadership context.
Okay.
So we have something that goes on at our company. somebody leaves the company. We're so mad at them. How could they leave our company? They were a key person at my company. I treated them so well. I gave them bonuses. I helped their family when their kid was sick, this and that. And you get this whole thing going up and you're suffering so much. You don't have to. You don't have to. That person has a hold on you. Their hooks are in you, as David Hawkins in the book Let and Go likes to say. Their hooks are in you. You don't have to react that way. You can pause. You can wish that person, all the best in life, and know and have confidence and come from love that a new person will show themselves, and it'll probably be even better for you, honestly. Mm. So I guess that's a little riff. I'm just going to pause there.
No, so great, right? I mean, do we give our power away to the world and all these other people that have their hooks in us, or do we,
right?
Do we, hold it and choose how we give it, right?
Right.
No, very, very good. So, when you think back, you've been doing this entrepreneurial thing for a while, and I want to kind of come back to our audience is really, it's visionaries, it's integrators, and it's those that care about or are really interested in visionaries and integrators. And so when you look back on your, your career, what would you kind of single out as maybe the biggest challenge you had to overcome along the way, and how'd you do it?
Well, I'll start with Image One, the company that I founded with my best friend, Joel, that I mentioned earlier. And, it was our relationship. We were the best of friends. We were brothers, by another mother, as they say.
Right.
And it was all fun, in high school and college. But when we became adults in the quote unquote, real world, we had to be responsible now for ourselves and had to make business decisions together. And as our lives evolved and we had different circumstances in our lives, and the business, would need to maybe support some of these circumstances, that was the biggest challenge constantly. And so, to rocket fuel, let me bring it full circle. Not that you've asked me to do this, but it's just the truth. It was understanding, where did we fit in this business? EOS was the first thing that really helped us get control. It took 8 years until EOS came into Image One's, world. And then all of a sudden we went, wow, okay. It like felt organized all of a sudden, and all the reasons, why EOS does that. And then understanding this idea of visionary integrator and taking our egos out of it. And for me, it was recognizing that, Joel he had 1,000 ideas all the time. And so he was visionary and I was integrator. And so just having, and I love the visionary integrator terms, by the way, because it took away the CEO, president, and there was something about that at that time that worked well for me. It was my ego. Somehow that worked well for me. I was proud of it, actually. And so that wonderful mix of the two of us, being able to build the business from there, I felt created peace for me, actually. And kind of getting out of each other's way and saying, okay, he's visionary, and being able to call, being able to say to him, Joel, you shouldn't be over here. You ought to be out there doing this, that, and this. And he would say, yeah, you're right. I do need to be doing this. I'm visionary for this company. And if we're going in that direction, these are the things that I need to be doing. And same thing for me. And so it was just so powerful and really helped us get through what was really, to me, the biggest struggle, because I love Joel so much. And I just wanted to have a regular relationship like we used to have together. Right. But business always seemed to be getting in the way.
You start to miss your friend.
I did. I missed my friends so much. I felt like I lost something.
That's so real. I love that. So now, you've got the whole experience with Image One. Now you're in the owner's box for Image One.
Right.
Now you've got the stuff that's going on with the 10 disciplines, and you're the visionary.
Yes.
So talk to me about that. So moving from, the integrator seat over here and now playing the visionary seat in this company. How is that different? How does that work? Is that something somebody else who's an integrator out there, should they think that's a possibility for them? What can you share about that?
Well,
Actually, before you start, I'm
yeah.
curious what's your Colby?
My Colby. I can't say it fast. I'm sorry. I'm not like you guys. I always have to look it up, but I'm a high fact finder.
Okay.
And I'm a high quick start.
Okay.
And I'm a 4, follow through. Yeah. I'm a 4 follow through. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm like a 2 on the other thing. So,
high fact finder, high quick start.
Yeah. High fact finder, high quick start. So, and I did the rocket fuel. I've done the rocket fuel assessment, I think 4 times in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's been great. And
is it consistent or has it moved around?
Well, it's been pretty consistent actually, in that it always comes up. I'm neither visionary or integrator. So this might end up coming back to you, and you can share your experiences, because obviously you're doing this and speaking with visionaries and integrators and those in between all the time. So what I feel I've learned about myself is that I have an ability to be at up in a high level, like up in the clouds, and see dots that can connect the businesses. So I felt very capable of doing that with Image One. In fact, oftentimes I felt like that was something I brought that maybe was harder for Joel. I see that as we work through the 10 disciplines. I see many dots and how they can come together in a way that makes sense for the business model. A lot of the integrator functions, I actually feel drained when I do them. So they're not exciting for me. I really didn't love overseeing the key components of the business, the sales, the operations, and the finance. I really didn't get a lot of energy from that. I hate holding people accountable. I can't stand it. I do have a high level of accountability that I put on myself. So I feel, like I always need to do what I say. So I might be working outside of my natural way of being is, just through training over the years is what I imagine might be going on. So, it's, and the other thing I'll say is bigger relationships. I was always handling bigger relationships at Image One. And I feel the same way with the 10 disciplines. I'm very focused on, keeping and strong relationships that could maybe down the line be very useful, on both sides for the business. And that's a little bit of the dot connecting as far as how I see it. Right. Culture is the last thing I'll say. And I always wondered, where does that fit 100%? Culture was like at Image One, I was so focused on that. That got me flying out of bed in the morning. Our values, how were we differentiating ourselves with our people? How could we make an impact in their lives, both personally and professionally? And so that was something I was just always, on the soapbox with. And I loved talking about it with the company and outside of the company, et cetera. And, 10 disciplines is a startup, so we only have a few people, but I feel very similar in that regard. So that's my brain dump on the Visionary Integrator and how it's showing up for me right now with the 10 disciplines. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I love that. So a lot of the things you said really check visionary boxes. Particularly kind of how you felt in the integrator role. You can do it. And so many of our leaders, they can do it. It just requires more energy to do those things that maybe aren't, instinctive for them, but through the survival of the journey they've gone through to got there, they've had to get really good at them. But the things that you instinctively do, intuitively do, that don't require as much energy, that a lot of those things sounded very, very visionary in nature. And then, of course, we talk about something called the 3-piece puzzle, which looks at how the visionary and the integrator duo, so those assessments that you took, hopefully you use those to kind of look at how you and Joel work together, and where there was overlap and conflict, and to kind of talk about that and get clear on it, so that you're not bumping into each other in places that you just don't need to, but getting clear. And then thinking about, how much that particular business needs from a visionary and from an integrator, right? Because, a SpaceX company needs a lot more visionary than, the drywall hanging company or the storage rental company, right? And so, there's something there. Same thing for the integrator side of the equation. Some companies are really large, have tons of people in lots of different markets, different products, really complex dynamics in the marketplace that they're dealing with. And some companies are really pretty straightforward and need heavy project management skills, right? So it's all different. And what's really cool to hear and kind of watch is you doing what you need to do, figuring out the right relationship between you and your partner as business owners to make it the best you could with what you got, which has been great, right? You guys have done amazing things. And then sort of, graduate into the owner's box. And, now you've got even more discretion in terms of how you spend that energy, and very naturally kind of shifting to a space now where, it's something that really fits well with how you're wired, and it's a passion for you. It's something you care deeply about. And again, as the entrepreneurs that we love do, you do these things, you have this sort of irresistible urge to go do them. And in doing that, you change the world. I mean, you have this huge impact that just goes and ripples and ripples and ripples. And now you're touching all these entrepreneurs, and each of those entrepreneurs are making their ripple. And it's just like this huge multiplier. And so I'm so excited for what you're doing. It's really fantastic.
It's a dream come true, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then you get to do it with your buddy Gino.
Yeah.
And so that's a whole other thing. I mean, I'm sure there was a day way back when you first met, and, would you have ever dreamed from that day, to here where you'd be partners in a business like 10 Disciplines doing what you guys are doing?
Well, I will share one story if it's okay.
Please.
Do we have time?
Please.
Okay.
Yeah.
A little known fact is when Gino was just getting started, I was part of an industry group, and we mentioned to the group that we're doing this process. I don't even think it was called EOS then.
Probably not.
I can't remember what he called it. And there was a lot of, interest in it. And somebody at a certain point, after a number of these industry meetings we had after a couple of years, somebody had mentioned to me, hey, would you come down? They were in Louisville and I was in Detroit, Michigan. And they said, would you come down and do essentially what would be a session, like a quarterly session or something like that. So I said to Gino, they want me to come down. I mean, do you want to go? And he said, no, I want you to go. I want you to go do it. Do you want to go do it? So I said, sure, I'll try it. I'll see. So I went down there. I did a session. I decided, I don't know if I'm made out for this. I need to stay focused on image one. What am I doing running off doing these, what are now these, EOS quarterly sessions? So just little known fact, maybe that was the first time that we kind of intersected, like maybe you'll be in business sometime together. Right. And you fast forward all these years later. And yeah, it is pretty crazy though, that it all kind of came full circle like that.
Early implementer for a day.
I get right.
I gotta think you would be great as an implementer.
That's nice of you to say.
Those folks in Louisville were very lucky to have that session with you.
You're too nice.
So Rob, I have so enjoyed this. Before we kind of wrap it up, if people want to learn more about 10 Disciplines, they want to learn more about you, we'll put this in the show notes, but where should they go to do that? Just go to the10disciplines.com and that will have everything that you need. The10disciplines.com. Yep. Perfect. Perfect. Thank you for that. So again, my personal gratitude to you, my gratitude for our guests. I know that they've listened and heard. Our listeners have heard something that can help them move along their journey from wherever they are. So to them, thanks for listening. And if you like this episode of our podcast, please give it a review. That helps others find out about it. And we're just trying to do our little part to try to spread the message and things that we have learned and have helped us, and hopefully help some other folks along the way. So thanks again, Rob. I'm grateful to you. And until next time,
Mark. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And everybody listening, until next time, go rock it.